Left 25-degree rudder.
5 degrees, no course given, sir.
The USS Gerald R. Ford can do things no other ship on Earth can match. She launched strike waves of over 100 aircraft against Iran, defended against hundreds of incoming missiles and drones, crossed 5 theaters in a single deployment without ever coming home. The ship that was never supposed to work just proved every critic wrong, and some of those things are genuinely terrifying. Here is what the most powerful warship ever built can actually do. Let's start with the number that should scare every military planner on the planet, 160. That is how many combat sorties the Ford can launch in a single day, sustained day after day for over a month straight. When the mission demands more, she surges to 270. One aircraft launching or landing every 5 minutes, around the clock. Just a relentless drumbeat of fighters, electronic warfare jets, and surveillance aircraft cycling off and back onto a 4.5-acre steel deck doing 30+ knots through open ocean. Most countries on Earth cannot match that from a land-based airfield with unlimited runway and unlimited fuel. The Ford does it while floating. 4 electromagnetic catapults hurl aircraft from 0 to 150 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. An electromagnetic pulse tuned to the exact weight of whatever sits on the track. 50,000-pound strike fighter or lightweight drone, each one getting precisely the energy it needs. If you watched our previous video on the Ford class, you know these catapults had a rough start. What matters now is what they just did in a real war, launching combat missions against Iran during Operation Epic Fury as part of strike waves exceeding 100 aircraft from land and sea combined. The system that nearly killed the program just helped execute one of the largest carrier-based combat operations in decades. But launching jets is just the headline. What makes the Ford genuinely frightening is how fast those jets get back in the air. The island was moved 140 feet toward the stern. That shift opened more flight deck at the bow than any carrier in history. Aircraft land, taxi straight to a centralized rearming zone, get loaded with fresh weapons and fuel simultaneously, and roll back to the catapult. 11 weapons elevators feed that cycle, each one carrying 24,000 pounds of ordnance from deep storage to the flight deck at 150 feet per minute on electromagnetic rails. Bombs go from the belly of the ship to under a fighter's wing in seconds. The jet is airborne again before the enemy has finished assessing what hit them the first time. 2 nuclear reactors generating 3 times more power than any carrier before her. The Ford will never stop for fuel, not once in 25 years. No tanker ships crossing oceans to keep her moving. She makes her own power, her own water, and eliminates her own waste. While every other navy is chained to supply lines, the Ford just keeps going. In late 2025, the Ford entered the Caribbean. Venezuela put 1,200 miles of coastline on war footing because of one ship. Months later, that same ship pushed through the Suez Canal into the Red Sea, launching combat strikes against Iran. 255 days deployed across 5 theaters. The most expensive warship ever built is now the most combat-proven carrier in the fleet. And that is just the ship. We have not talked about what flies off it yet. If an enemy commander knows the Ford is somewhere in his ocean but does not know where, he already has a problem he cannot solve. 100,000 tons doing 30+ knots in total electromagnetic silence. No electronic trace for any sensor to detect. The ship was in one position 6 hours ago. It is somewhere else now. The ocean is 360 million square kilometers of empty water, and the Ford is a ghost moving through it at 35 miles an hour in any direction it chooses. But not knowing where the Ford is only the first problem. The second one is worse. When the strike group decides to attack, the first thing that dies is the enemy's ability to see. The Ford carries an entire squadron of EA-18G Growlers, aircraft that do not carry bombs. they carry something more dangerous: the most advanced electronic warfare suite on the planet. A single Growler detects every radar frequency in the battle space, search radars, fire control systems, missile guidance networks, and either jams them into static or destroys them with targeted missiles. Multiple Growlers operating together create an electromagnetic blanket across hundreds of miles. Enemy radar stays on. It transmits. It sees nothing real. Every screen fills with ghost targets, false signals, and noise. The commander staring at his displays is not just blind. His own equipment is lying to him. And while every enemy sensor goes dark, the E-2D Hawkeye circling above the fort sees everything. A radar dome tracking hundreds of contacts simultaneously across hundreds of miles. Ships, aircraft, missile launches. The Hawkeye commands the entire battle. It feeds targeting data to destroyers armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. It connects every weapon in the strike group into a single kill chain through the cooperative engagement capability, a system that fuses sensor data from every ship and aircraft into one shared picture. The Ford's eyes see everything. The enemy's eyes see nothing. Then the strike arrives. 4 squadrons of FA-18 Super Hornets loaded with precision-guided bombs, air-to-air missiles, and anti-ship weapons. They are inside enemy airspace before anyone knows they launched. Air defenses cannot track them because the Growlers killed the radar minutes ago. Interceptors cannot scramble because Tomahawks from the destroyers already hit the airfields. The first wave delivers its payload and returns to the fort. The weapons elevators feed fresh ordnance to the deck. The jets arm and launch again. The second wave hits before the enemy has recovered from the first, then a third, then a fourth. The cycle does not stop. Below the surface, MH-60 helicopters hunt enemy submarines with sonar and torpedoes before they ever get within range. Above the surface, Aegis-equipped destroyers track every retaliatory missile and kill it mid-flight. The enemy is fighting a force he cannot track, cannot target, while it hits him from every direction at once. During Operation Epic Fury, this is exactly what happened. The Ford launched combat strikes against Iranian military infrastructure from the eastern Mediterranean and then the Red Sea. The combined force defended against hundreds of Iranian missiles and drones. 0 American casualties. The most advanced carrier ever built doing exactly what it was designed to do, in a real shooting war for the first time. And when the Ford operates alongside the USS Abraham Lincoln, 2 carrier strike groups combined, the numbers become something no military on Earth can answer. 320 daily sorties, over 90 aircraft across 2 air wings, 2 Aegis networks overlapping, enough sustained firepower to dismantle an entire country's air defense network in days. Which country do you think could actually stand a chance against this? Drop it in the comments. So everything the enemy throws gets jammed, intercepted, or destroyed before it reaches the carrier. But say something gets through. 1 missile out of 100 survives the Growlers, dodges the Aegis interceptors, outmaneuvers the Sea Sparrows, and somehow flies past the Siu's wall of tungsten rounds. Say it actually hits the Ford. Now what? If you have watched our previous video on why aircraft carriers are impossible to sink, you already know the answer. But for everyone else, hitting this ship is not the same as hurting it. And hurting it is nowhere near the same as stopping it. The Ford has a double-layered hull, alternating walls of steel and empty voids that force any weapon to punch through multiple barriers before reaching anything critical. Behind that hull, thousands of separate compartments sealed off by watertight doors and heavy bulkheads. A torpedo blows a hole in one section, that section floods, gets sealed, and the rest of the ship keeps fighting. The crew deliberately floods compartments on the opposite side to keep the ship level. She bleeds on purpose to stay balanced. 5,000 sailors trained in damage control swarm the damage, sealing, pumping, patching, rerouting, while backup generators keep the power flowing and backup fire main systems keep the water moving to fight fires. Every critical system has a backup. Most backups have their own backups. The Navy tested this. They detonated 3 40,000-pound explosive charges next to the Ford's hold during full ship shock trials. The blast registered as a 3.9 magnitude earthquake. When it was over, no fires. Helicopters landing on deck within minutes. Radar locking targets immediately. The ship ate 3 earthquakes and kept operating like nothing happened. And before the Ford, the Navy spent 4 weeks trying to sink the retired carrier USS America with missiles, torpedoes, and bombs. 4 weeks of everything the arsenal could throw. The ship would not go down. They had to board it and blow it up from the inside with demolition charges just to send it to the bottom. That was a carrier from the 1960s. The Ford is built 60 years tougher, but here is the detail that makes an enemy's job truly hopeless. Even if a missile damages the flight deck, cracks the surface, takes out a catapult, disrupts operations, the crew patches it. The materials and equipment to repair flight deck damage are on board and the procedures are drilled constantly. A damaged catapult means 3 still work. A hole in the deck means aircraft shift to a different launch position. The Ford does not need to be perfect to be lethal. She just needs to keep operating. And stopping a ship that was built to absorb punishment, crewed by 5,000 trained damage control specialists, and powered by nuclear reactors that never run out of energy, that is not a military problem. That is a math problem with no good answer. You cannot find her. You cannot get a missile through her defenses. And even if you do, you cannot sink her. That is what terrifying actually looks like. The Ford is already the most powerful warship on Earth, and it is running on half power. 2 nuclear reactors generate over 100 megawatts of electricity. The catapults, radar, propulsion, the systems keeping 5,000 people alive, all of it consumes roughly 50% of what those reactors produce. The other 50% is sitting there, empty, reserved for weapons that will make everything the Ford does today look primitive. Directed energy lasers, a beam of concentrated light that fires at the speed of light. No $2 million interceptor missile launched for every incoming threat. The laser locks onto an incoming cruise missile and burns through it before it covers its last mile against a swarm of cheap drones, 50, 100, 200 coming from every direction. The laser does not care how many there are. It kills them one after another as fast as it can track them. The only limit is power. On a nuclear carrier, power never runs out. Electromagnetic railguns, a projectile fired at Mach 6 using nothing but electricity. No explosive warhead, just a chunk of metal moving so fast it destroys anything it hits with pure kinetic energy. The range reaches further than any conventional gun ever built. And the ammunition is cheap, small, compact, and the ship can carry thousands of rounds where a traditional warship carries dozens of missiles. A railgun on the Ford would turn the ship into an artillery platform that can strike targets at distances currently reserved for cruise missiles at a fraction of the cost per shot. Then there is the MQ-25 Stingray, the Navy's first carrier-launched drone. Right now it refuels fighters in mid-air, replacing the Super Hornets that currently waste combat missions hauling fuel tanks instead of weapons. But that is just the beginning. The Stingray extends the strike range of every jet on the carrier by hundreds of miles. That means the Ford can sit farther from enemy coastlines and still hit targets deep inland. The carrier becomes harder to find while its reach grows longer, and the airframe was designed to evolve. Surveillance, electronic warfare, autonomous combat missions. The Navy is not putting one drone on a carrier. They are building the foundation for a future where unmanned aircraft fly alongside manned fighters and execute missions no human pilot could survive. 76 Stingrays are planned. Every Ford-class and Nimitz-class carrier will eventually carry them. Now the question is what the Ford becomes in 10 years? The same ship, the same reactors, but now carrying laser weapons that never run out of ammunition. railguns that fire at Mach 6 for almost no cost, autonomous drones that extend the strike range by hundreds of miles and fly into airspace where sending a human would be suicide. Every one of those systems plugging into the power reserve that has been sitting there since the day the ship launched, waiting for exactly this moment. The Ford was not built to fight today's wars. It was built to fight every war for the next 90 years, and each year that passes, the ship gets more dangerous than the year before. The enemy is not just facing what the Ford can do right now, they are facing what the Ford will be able to do in 2035, in 2050, in 2070, a weapons platform that evolves faster than the threats against it, powered by reactors that were designed for this before the weapons even existed. 255 days. That is how long the Ford has been at sea as of early March 2026. She left Norfolk, Virginia on June 24, 2025 for what was supposed to be a routine Mediterranean deployment. It was not routine. NATO exercises in the Atlantic turned into Arctic Circle operations with the Norwegian Navy. That turned into a redeployment across the ocean to the Caribbean for counter-narcotics missions and the operation that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. That turned into orders back across the Atlantic through the Strait of Gibraltar, into the Mediterranean, through the Suez Canal, and into the Red Sea to launch combat strikes against Iran. 5 theaters, 1 crew, no trip home. The Navy's modern deployment record is 294 consecutive days, set by the USS Abraham Lincoln in 2020. The Ford is closing in on it. If she stays on station past mid-April, she breaks it. If she stays into May, she passes 300 days, a length not seen since Vietnam. The sailors on board signed up knowing deployments are hard, but nobody signed up for this. Reports from inside the ship describe a crew stretched to the edge. One sailor missed the death of a family member because the deployment kept getting extended. Others missed births, missed marriages, missed their children's first steps. Anonymous crew members have told reporters that anger is widespread and that some plan to leave the Navy the moment they get home. The ship works. The technology performs. The catapults launch. The reactors run. But the 5,000 people inside that steel hull are not machines. They are 20-year-olds standing 18-hour watches in windowless compartments. They are parents who have not held their kids in 8 months. They are mechanics and technicians keeping billion-dollar systems running on 4 hours of sleep because the mission does not stop and neither can they. This is the part of terrifying capability that never makes the headline. The Ford can stay at sea for 25 years without refueling, but the humans inside it cannot. Every extra month of deployment compresses the time they spend at home before the next one. Maintenance schedules get pushed. Training windows shrink. The sailors who keep this ship lethal burn out, and some of them do not come back. The most powerful warship on Earth is only as powerful as the people who refuse to let it stop. And right now, those people are tired and still showing up for every watch, every single day for 255 days straight. If that is not the definition of service, nothing is. If you respect what they do, like this video and subscribe. See you in the next one.